Blog Talk Radio.
Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot, oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here's your host, paranormal researcher Patricia Baker, on the one, the only Supernatural Girls.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker, and unfortunately tonight it is Supernatural Girl because PK is not feeling so well. She was doing great, and she was all excited to be back on the show with us, and then this week she had a setback. So she sends her love to everybody, and hopefully we'll be back next week with the numbers. Let us know what we can expect because so much is crazy out there, and it always helps to hear from PK to get a reading on what's coming next. So we have great guests tonight. Well, I have a great guest tonight for everybody. It's Allison. I'm going to bring him on in just a few minutes. He is a bona fide ghost hunter, paranormal investigator. He's the founder of A.G.H.O.S.T, Advanced Ghost Hunters of Seattle-Tacoma. And he's with us to talk about all the places he's been because he's been all over the world. We're going to get to this. We are going to get to this in just a minute. But first, I just wanted to tell you that Russia needs your help. And here's why they need your help. Because there's a haunted Russian museum. And they're asking for your help identifying mysterious lights that have been appearing on their security camera. So some people are saying it's plasmoid, it flies like a plasmoid, acts like a plasmoid, but nobody's sure about why these things are showing up in the museum. So now listen, the whole story is on our Facebook page. Make sure you go there, give us a like and follow us on Twitter, all that good stuff. But take a look at this because you might be able to solve the mystery. They really want some help, and they're reaching out. So make sure you go over and read the story, find out all about it, and if you have any hits on what this is, make sure you contact the museum. They're waiting for an answer, so that'll be fun to do. I take a good long look at that. So our guest for tonight, he is just the ultimate ghost hunter. He's been also lecturing for power performers since 2004. He's spoken to thousands of students at hundreds of colleges and universities throughout the U.S. on his ghost hunting adventures. He even teaches a class based on his book, Ghostology 101, Becoming a Ghost Hunter at the University of Washington and Tacoma Community College. Now, his lectures have also taken him to Canada and Scotland. He's got a new trip coming up, and he may be talking about that. It's the first time he's been let out since the lockdown. But he has worked with some of the biggest names in the field, Jason and Grant of Ghost Hunters fame. He has also investigated some of the scariest and most haunted sites known to man. The Stanley Hotel, Eastern State Prison, Amityville House, Alcatraz Prison, Roman catacombs, the ancient Rams Inn, and even the original location of the Exorcist case. So let's bring him on the show. Ross, welcome to Supernatural Girls.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure. I mean, my goodness, what an exciting life to lead. How in the world did you get into all of this?
Oh, I blame my mother. I have a mother that loves ghost stories. Yeah, so I always tell people you can't blame your parents for something. But my mother just loves ghost stories, so I grew up listening to these stories and we're just very fascinated with them. I think it was just my curiosity to know if there was any truth behind them that got me involved in the field.
What a nice way to be introduced. So you had such a positive experience. That's great. Now, did you have any ghosts in your home growing up?
No, unfortunately. I was, and that was another thing too, because when I started ghost hunting, it wasn't the big fad that it is today. You know, there weren't all these television shows. And when I started Ghost, we were 1 out of 100 nationally. And now easily each state could easily have 100 groups plus. So when I got involved in the field and started working with, you know, other peoples that preceded me, most of these people had those experiences. They grew up in haunted places and, you know, had these encounters. And me, I was kind of like the odd man out because I hadn't. I was just curious to see if there was any truth behind this. So now, you know, as the tables have turned, you see that there's more people that are more curious about it that haven't had the experiences than those who have actually had the experiences.
Exactly. So when you actually put on your ghost hunting hat, how old were you?
Oh, I was in my early teens. I remember I was at a library, our local library, and I found a Hans Holzer book on psychic photography and how to, you know, record EVPs. So as soon as I got a hold of that book, I was in a local cemetery with a, you know, cassette recorder trying to capture EVPs. So that was one of the earliest ghost hunting experiences that I have. And I was probably about, I think, 14, 15 years old.
Oh, my goodness. Well, you embraced it all very young, and that gives you a leg up on all of this stuff because you've been doing it for so long. Like you said, when you first started, you were one out of just so many, and now there's just hundreds of groups out there and television shows and other media. So you're a real standout because you did this young. So tell me, what was your first successful experience when you actually captured something or sensed something, saw something?
Well, my first physical encounter was when my team was spending the night at Alcatraz. This was back in the day when you could do it. We were one of the first groups to actually be able to spend the night at Alcatraz and do this. So it was a very rare experience. And so when we did this, and this was, about, maybe about 15 years ago, maybe more, 15, 16 years ago, we were, they took us out to the island. I remember they took us through the underground tunnels. These are the tunnels that they would use to bring the prisoners when they got on the island to their cells and go through the whole process. So we went through those tunnels that aren't open to the public. Then they took us to a bunch of other buildings. But now they have opened up a few of these buildings to the public if you've actually been to Alcatraz Island recently. It was kind of cool. I actually went back there a few years ago and got to see them during the daylight. But, you know, just to be able to explore a lot of these places that weren't open to the public at the time, you know, the hospital wing, the morgue. And the morgue was where I had my first physical encounter. Now, the morgue is connected to a tunnel that goes down underground because in this underground compartment is where they used to keep the gunpowder because Alcatraz actually started out as a military base before it became the state penitentiary and the state park that it is today. And so I was the first to venture through this area. And I, of course, I'm, taking pictures of the room, and it's got, dirt floor, brick walls, brick ceiling. It's an arch, brick ceiling. And I start to make my way across the room because now I want to get a picture of the entrance of the room, and I want to get the widest angle. Now, at this time, my members are starting to follow me in, so they're starting to filter into the room too. Mm-hmm. And as I'm backing up to take the widest angle shot that I could, one of the members put their hand on my shoulder and physically stopped me because obviously I was going to, step on them as I was backing into the corner. So I turned around to apologize to the member that I had backed into the corner, and there was nobody there.
Ooh. But you felt the hand, and it was just as real as anybody's hand.
I was expecting to see a member behind me because I felt the weight of a hand, the pressure of the fingers as it grabbed my shoulder, and it physically stopped me because I was stepping backwards.
That's
and, of
amazing.
course, nobody there.
Wow. Now, the people that were behind you, did anybody see anything?
No, there wasn't anybody behind me at the time. That's the thing.
So there was absolutely nobody that was coming up to you that would have seen something putting its hand on you.
No, everybody was in front of me. I just assumed somebody
gosh.
was behind me, and everybody was in front of me.
Wow, that's a great experience, and it sounds like you really enjoyed that. It didn't scare you or anything.
No, because a lot of times people don't understand that when you have these encounters, sometimes they're so quick. A lot of times you're just thinking to yourself, what was that? What the hell just happened? So you're kind of questioning yourself if you really experienced that or not. So that tends to happen more often than, the fear factor, like, oh, my God,
Yes.
Another great example, the first time out of all the years that I have been doing this, and a lot of people always ask me this, have I ever seen a ghost? And that was one of the things that I still kind of say that I really haven't yet. But I had an encounter that I'd like to believe was. And we were investigating shakers, and this is up in Wisconsin. And we were there for the full weekend, and it was really cool. I was running some experience. Now, Shakers used to be a brothel. And so I actually had one of my guest investigators stay up in the top floor, which used to be the old brothel. And so he was actually staying up there by himself. We had a bunch of cameras on him. We just wanted to monitor the seclusion of somebody up in that area. And to my surprise, he actually was getting a little uncomfortable doing this. And so he says, Ross, can I please just go ahead and sleep in the car? I don't know if I can do this all night. And, and I was like, come on, buddy, I really need you to do this. We got the cameras on you. I'll be right downstairs, so if anything happens, I can run up the stairs, and assist you.
Right.
And so I finally, convinced him to go ahead, and stay the night in the room by himself. Now, I'm downstairs, and I'm sleeping on the couch. I got David Weatherly. I don't know if you're familiar with David Weatherly.
Yes, I know David. Yes.
Yes, so he was, in the room next to me. Now, that night, I was having a hard time sleeping because every time I'd start to doze off, there would be this loud noise in the room, and it would wake me up. Because I'm one of those people, I'm not afraid to sleep in a haunted room, but I'm also very light sleeper when I'm staying in a haunted room because I don't want to miss it.
Right.
So whenever there's an interesting noise, I'm like, what was that? Got my hand on the camera ready to go.
Yeah.
So that whole night, I kept hearing those noises, so it kept me up all night. As I'm, just sitting there, actually laying on the couch, just trying to get back to sleep, I hear, and his name was Michael, I hear him coming down the stairs. And I'm thinking, oh, great. He's going to come in, and he's going to tell me he can't do it anymore, and he wants to go out to the car. So I decide I'm not going to acknowledge him. I'm just going to look at my, camera, pretend he's not there, And the way the staircase went is he goes down the staircase. You got to come back around to go down the next flight of stairs because I'm on the second floor. So the room that I'm staying in is actually, like I said, it has a couch. It's a little living room set up, and it's got a big window in the doorway. So I can see what's going on in the hallway. So through my peripheral vision, I see him come around the corner of the staircase and walk past the door, and then I hear him go down the next flight of steps.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, okay, I better check on him just to make sure, he's okay. He may have had, something might have happened. He may be freaked out, so I better check on him. So I get up, I go downstairs, and when I get to the bottom stairs, the door to leave, I realize that the door is locked on the inside.
Oh, no.
Now, I didn't really think much of it because I didn't think much of it because I hadn't been sleeping, so it really didn't register right away.
Yeah.
Like, oh, wait, how could he have locked the door if he went out the door? That type of thing.
Exactly.
But I went ahead and I unlocked the door. I go outside. I go to his car, and he's not there. So I go back inside. I go all the way up to the third floor, and there he is in the bed. And I was like, oh, I thought you left. And he's like, no. I said, I heard you go down the stairs. And he's like, oh, I thought that was you. I was like,
so
no.
he heard it too. All right.
He heard it too. So the one time I had the opportunity to see an apparition, I didn't look because I assumed it was Michael trying to leave.
Oh, how
I was
funny.
so mad at myself. I know.
Oh, I bet. That's awful, Ross. That's awful.
I know.
Oh, gosh. That's too bad. But at least you had confirmation that he heard the same thing you did.
Yes.
So that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just the life of a ghost hunter. It's always those missed opportunities.
Oh, gosh, I know it. But now, so many years later after when you began as a teenager, there's all kinds of new equipment out there. What do you use?
I really try to focus on having more of a scientific approach. Unfortunately, I do find that there's a lot of devices out there that can be too suggestive. Now, granted, there's no device that's going to tell you have a ghost in the room. So what we do is we take devices that help us read the atmosphere and let us tell us if there's changes in the atmosphere. Traditionally you got EMF detectors. We use ion detectors. We use thermal cameras. We use, temperature readings. I love cameras. Cameras are great. I'm really trying to push people into, photos are so limited on information. And now that, the technology becomes cheaper and cheaper and more advanced, we really should be focusing more on 360 recordings. Now, granted, there's not a lot of 360 that does infrared. But the nice thing about 360 cameras is you never have those missed opportunities again because the camera's pointed in the wrong direction. You're seeing a full 360 of the room. So I really feel that should be something that should be more used on ghost hunts. We really need to focus more on video rather than just photography because, again, photography is so limited. Audio is great. EVPs are amazing. So I always, love to, break out the recorder. And I even love to go old school. I've always encouraged people, don't forget our roots, where we started. When I started ghost hunting, we didn't have digital cameras and digital recorders. Yeah. We were still using, the cassettes and film. That was the thing. And I really feel that we may be missing out on some possible phenomena because when you go to analog and you go to, chemical processing film, there may be phenomena that's more easily captured with that processing rather than with the digital processing.
You bring up a very important point because I think some people actually get better results with a real camera and something other than their iPhone or Android. So people are so used to doing videos and taking pictures with your phone, but I have seen many more results when you actually use a camera. Have you? Does it work like that for you too?
No. I find that, unfortunately, especially when you're going, talking about film, it is a little more limited because it's not easily accessible and it's more cost effective, because it's more costly when you have to, have your film processed, and finding places to process your film is a little, harder as well. So it's becoming, harder to maintain that level of investigation. So I do find that, trying to get people to go back to that, I say at least, give it a try when you're doing a place that you find is very, very active. You don't have to do film on every investigation. You don't have to, bring out a cassette, to try for EVPs on every investigation, but do, have them available if the place is pretty active. See if there is a difference when you're recording from digital to analog. And I think you may be surprised.
Yeah, I agree with
one
you.
of the most, one of the most famous cases that people don't really know about because this was the late 80s when this became a big thing is the Ghostwriter case. That's a case where the messages were appearing on Polaroid film. When they'd ask a question into the air, they'd take a picture with their, Polaroid camera, and when the picture came out, and developed, the answer would be written on the picture itself.
Oh, I love that.
And
that's great.
Yeah. And that was, a very well-known case back in the day. But again, a lot of people aren't aware of things like that because we have moved to the digital era. And I think, I always encourage people, don't forget about our roots. EVPs were captured originally on reel-to-reel recorders.
Exactly.
The first ghost photos were on film. So who's to say we're not missing out on certain phenomena that can only be captured with those elements?
I think we are missing out, especially when it comes to Polaroid film, because I'm reminded of Robin Foy's group, and there was a movie done about them called the Afterlife Investigations. I don't know if you had a chance to see that. But Robin's group of mediums had amazing results, first with a Polaroid camera, and then they had Polaroid involved. And Polaroid came and they placed a sealed carton of film on the middle of the table, and they had pictures come out from just that. The thing was sealed. And Robin's group had the most amazing photographs that showed up on that film, even though it hadn't even been in the camera. So I think there's something about that Polaroid film, and you talk about we could be missing things. Yeah, I think we are. And I don't know the situation with Polaroid film that like it used to be. This was years ago, again, as you mentioned. But it would be great to be able to use those, unopened boxes of film in situations like you're involved in.
Right. Well, what you're talking about is psychography, and that was the old the ability that psychics could produce images on film when it had not been exposed to anything yet. And then the thing is if psychics were able to do it, who's to say a ghost couldn't do it either?
Exactly.
So, I definitely believe that we're missing out on that.
Yeah, well, we got to get some Polaroid film here. That's all there is to it. Start working with it. I just think it's amazing what groups that have used that have come up with. They had pictures in Robin's group of strange landscapes, other planets. I mean, things that nobody was thinking of. They just appeared on the film. Mm-hmm. So, but I'm very intrigued by the what was it? Did you call it the ghost wires? Is that what it was? That case?
The psychography? Oh, the Ghost Writer. The case was called Ghost Writer.
Ghost Writer. Okay. I'm glad you corrected that. Thank you. Yeah,
not to be confused with the series, the children's series back in the day. But
Ghost Writer.
And they called it the Ghost Writer. Yes, because he would actually.
I'm gonna look that one up.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal case. It was in California. And you can still find some of the evidence that they collected. In fact, Sightings, if anybody remembers that old show,
I do.
Did one of their episodes at that place. And they even proved the phenomena because they stood there and did an experiment where they asked a question, took a picture, the picture comes out, and they hold the picture up to the camera the whole time. So you see this whole process. And sure enough, when the picture came through, there was writing in the picture, just proving that it couldn't have been, fake.
Yeah, anything else. Did they take a picture just of the air around them? I mean, did they point it at anything in particular? Just the air.
Basically what you could do was just stand in the center of the room, ask a question to the spirit, take a picture, and then your answer would be in that photo.
Great. And now how many people were in that group?
Well, this wasn't a group. This was just a couple gentlemen that lived in the house.
Oh, okay.
So this was just their personal experiences. They had sightings come out. They did their thing. I believe they've had a couple groups come out at the time, but again, remember, ghost hunting was not a big thing back then, so you didn't have a lot of groups to choose from. But I believe there was a few other investigations, but I do know that the activity had stopped. And what's interesting is they had actually asked, I forget what the question was, but the spirit did reply, "This will end now." And it never happened again.
Oh, what a shame. Did they offend the spirit or try to get too far into the future? Sometimes I've heard that happen.
I don't know. So, but I think, if that could happen for them, who's to say it couldn't happen anywhere else?
Exactly.
And we don't have that old technology available to us, so we can miss out on that. And again, ghost hunting can be a very expensive hobby for a lot of people. And so a lot of people don't want to put the extra money or don't have the extra money to buy film and, maintain that, or even cassettes. So
yeah, I know. And everybody who knows the people who have written books or been on television, they all think, oh, he must be really wealthy from all this. But that's really not the way it goes. No.
No, I can validate that. I've got my 8th book just came out. I don't make a living off of writing books or even making appearances. And most time, and I've been on a lot of shows, on the ghost hunting shows, you really don't, make anything. Sometimes they may cover your expenses, but most cases, they don't pay you to be on these shows.
No, I know they don't.
Unless you got your own television show, you don't make money doing this. I make my money. Granted, I'm the only full-time ghost hunter in the Northwest. I make my money by doing lectures or writing my books and doing tours. That's it.
Yeah. So you work hard. You certainly work hard. Yes. So, Ross, tell me a little bit about your area, Seattle-Tacoma. What's it like out there? Is it like filled with ghosts? I mean, it sounds like you've got great places to take your tourists that want to see this.
Oh, yeah. No, it's very green, just so you know. That's why we're called the Emerald City. But Seattle is nice. It really is. You are surrounded by the mountains. But I was very surprised when I started investigating the Northwest because, you look at places like, the East Coast, New York, or even overseas like London, where you have a lot of history. And I was always envious of those locations, wishing I had lived in those locations because you had access to a lot of history and historic buildings. And then here I am in the Northwest, which is the youngest part of the country. And
how funny.
I was always envious of those places. But to my surprise, we have our fair share of ghosts as well. We have our fair share of tragedies, of history as well. And I did find, when I started my tours in Pioneer Square, which is where Seattle first started in 1851, you basically have an area that I was very successful in starting tours and doing lots of investigations because, to be honest with you, ghosts are everywhere. In fact, the place doesn't even necessarily need to be old to be haunted. So
now, in your area, what is your favorite ghost story?
Oh, there's so many. And that's funny too because so many people always ask me, being that I've traveled all over the world and I've been to some of the most haunted places that you can imagine. They always ask me, what is the most haunted place you've ever been to? And it's really hard for me to label the most haunted place. For me, where I've had most of my experiences have been here at home in the Northwest because I have access to a lot of these places multiple times. Right. And people don't tend to understand that with ghost hunting, it's all about being at the right place at the right time. You could spend a weekend at Chillingham Castle, which is, labeled as the most haunted castle in the UK, and you may never have an experience. But, for me, being that I have access to a lot of places here in Seattle that I've, investigated a number of times, I can validate a lot of these, encounters and walk away with more experiences. So for me, places like that tend to be, I would like to think, are more haunted, but it's just because I have more opportunities of having these encounters. I can't say that Chillingham Castle's not haunted just because I didn't have an experience there that weekend. But I did have an experience there that weekend. I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah, I understand, yes.
It's a great
I'm
place.
Sure you did have an experience there.
Castle. I was going to say, for me, one of my favorite places is like the USS Turner Joy, which is a retired Navy destroyer. I've been there. In fact, Spooked in Seattle, my ghost tour business, actually, we would every month, before COVID hit, we would do public ghost hunts. And,
so
so
cool.
being that I've had access to this place every month, I would be there, spending the weekends there, you'd have more opportunities to have these experiences. And there are times, I would get there early to unlock the ship, turn off the alarm, and I would hear somebody walking behind me on the ship, and this is a big metal ship.
Yeah.
So you could easily hear somebody walking around on the ship.
Oh, my goodness.
I would have those experiences, lights turning on and off on me while I'm, going around, making sure everything's okay. Hearing voices and there's nobody there, or hearing whistling, or capturing some of the most amazing EVPs, during your investigation. So
now, why do you think that ship
place.
carries so many ghosts?
Well, there was a tragic event that did happen on the ship where they had a misfire, and what happens is when they have a misfire, they have certain protocols that they have to follow, and a lot of it is a hose down the barrel of the gun to cool off the barrel of the gun before they reload it, because what they do is they put a small charge in there, because if there's anything stuck in the barrel of the gun, that small charge will push it out. Well, unfortunately, when they were going through the steps, the barrel of the gun was not cool enough when they put the small charge in, and it blew up, and it killed 2 men in the gun mount, and the third one, who was just getting ready to enter the gun mount, was thrown out, and he later died of his injuries. So, granted, there wasn't a lot of deaths on the ship that had been recorded, but that was one of the tragic events. Now, I can't say that those are the men that haunt the ship. We can't assume those things.
Right.
But you also have to understand that when you're talking about the military life, for a lot of these, soldiers, for men and women, this becomes their life 24/7.
It is.
Maybe
right
they don't have,
that,
they don't have family to go back to. So this is their life, and they choose to, protect our country, and even after death, they may still hang around these bases or, these ships that they served on. Yes,
that makes sense. And if there was a trauma involved in their death, then that makes even more sense. So, gosh. Now, so you've moved on from Seattle, even though you're there still. You've traveled, as you said, the world. And tell us about the Exorcist case. You got to go to the original location of that. What did you find?
That's actually one of my favorite stories. Everybody loves to hear this story.
Oh, goody.
So, as you stated in the beginning, I lecture at colleges and universities, and I was asked to St. Louis University to do my Ghostology 101, and when I do my lecture, I'll also take the students on a ghost hunt. So I was invited to St. Louis University, and at the time, I really didn't put two to two together, realizing that this is the location where the true Exorcist case took place. The church that was involved in that case, actually, their church is right in the heart of the campus. So when we did our investigation for the students, they took me to the building that was once owned by the church. Now, the church has sold it to the campus, and so we go through this building, and it's right next to the church that was involved in this. So we go through the building, and there was nothing odd about the building. It was just a nice old building. I've been in a lot of old buildings. So we go around through all the, the different floors, and finally we get to the 4th floor. And I was surprised because the 4th floor was completely run down and abandoned. Graffiti everywhere, holes all over the place. And I was like, my thoughts exactly. I was like, this is kind of odd, especially how huge it was up there. I would think the campus would utilize this space, for storage or, for dorm rooms, whatever. But they've completely shut it down. And they told me that they have shut it down because they've had too many problems on the 4th floor. And when they say problems, they're kind of referring to paranormal problems. So so I'm kind of, going through all the different rooms and everything, and they tell me, oh, this is a room where apparently a nun had committed suicide because at one time the nuns did live on the 4th floor of this building, and they taught Sunday school on the 4th floor as well, and you could see the old classrooms with the small desks and everything. That's still all up there.
Oh, my goodness.
And so we go through all the different rooms, and we walk into this one room, and right when I walked into the room, I heard this crunch underneath my feet. And I looked down, and I realized, I'd stepped on a dead bird. Oh. So I kind of kicked the bird over to the side because I didn't want anybody else to step on it. And when I shined my light through the rest of the room, I was surprised to see that the room was just filled with dozens and dozens of dead birds.
Oh, gross.
And I had already been through most of the 4th. Yeah, I already been through most of the 4th floor. So I had not seen any dead animals except in this one room now. So this is kind of odd. And I'm standing in the center of the room waiting for the students to come in, and none of the students will come in. They're all standing in the doorway. And I'm just like, okay, this is kind of odd. What's going on? And they proceed to tell me that this is the room that the boy had stayed in. Now, if you're not familiar with the case, the story is that when they brought the boy, it was actually a little boy that they named Robbie to protect his identity, not a little girl named Linda Blair, just so you know.
Right.
So when they brought him to the campus, they believed that they could not perform a full exorcism on the boy in the church because this could possibly kill the boy. So story has it they had moved him to various secret locations, performing multiple exorcisms on the boy before they finally performed the final exorcism at the local hospital. So I realized that I'm standing in this room with all these dead birds, realizing that this is where one of the exorcisms had been performed.
Wow.
So creep factor's gone up a bit. All right.
Yeah.
Now, I give the students some of the basic equipment so they can assist me on the ghost hunt. And so they start to come in the room, and we're in this room for less than 5 minutes when all of a sudden all the equipment starts to go off at the exact same time. We're talking the temperature started to drop in the room. And we can feel the room getting colder and colder, and I'm expecting to see my breath anytime soon.
Yeah.
EMF detectors going off like crazy, and we can't figure out what's causing the EMF readings. The compass is spinning around and around and around, and it will not stop. And I'm like, holy crap, this is really happening.
There's something there.
Yeah, so I got to document this, just to prove that this is really happening. Now, a picture is not going to tell you that this is really happening. So luckily, my camera shoots an infrared video. Quickly switch my camera over to video. I start filming everything that's going on. And, one other thing that I forgot to point out when I talked about the dead birds in the room, all the doors had been removed on the 4th floor. Security had removed all the doors just so that they didn't have to worry about students sneaking around up there.
Okay.
So the birds had access to the whole 4th floor. It's odd that they choose this one room to die in.
Yeah,
okay?
And how were they even getting in? Does anybody know?
They don't know how they got into the building, but the fact that they all chose to die in this one room was the odd thing. So anyways, sorry. Now, getting back to, as I said, compass is spinning around, temperatures starting to drop, EMF detectors going off like crazy. I want to document this, so I switch my camera to video, and I start filming everything that's going on. I'm filming, the equipment. I'm filming the students, just trying to do my best to prove that we are really experiencing this.
Yeah.
And so, we're showing that this is really happening. It starts to slow down a little bit, and I figure, okay, before it completely stops, I want to try for some EVP. So I start asking questions into the room. Now, I get to the question, can you tell me whose room this is? There's about 12 seconds of silence. And then all of a sudden I start to hear crying to the left of me. And I turn and I realize that a couple of the female students have started to cry because they're so terrified being in this room.
Oh, no. Oh.
So I realize, okay, they're uncomfortable. I have to admit, I'm a little uncomfortable too because I don't have my normal ghost hunting team. This is a bunch of college students just following me around.
With you. Yeah.
So I'm thinking, okay, for safety reasons, let's go ahead and wrap it up. And hopefully I'll come back and do my own little investigation. Well, I didn't get a chance to go back that night. But after I finished my lecture tour, I got home and I started reviewing all the evidence that I had collected at all these campuses. And I got to the video where it asked, can you tell me whose room this is? And right after I asked that question, now I'm going to edit this because I don't want to offend anybody, but it basically says, F you, it's mine.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah.
And was the voice, could you tell, because I know some of the EVPs are a bit amorphous, could you tell if it was a male or female voice?
It was definitely a very gruff male voice.
Wow. Wow, what a story. That's a great one, Ross. It's too bad they started crying. It's like, oh, my God. But maybe not. Maybe they saved you from being treated badly by the person who gave you that message, or the person. It sounds like, a lot of this stuff with the Exorcist case, and I know you're super familiar with all the details of it. It sounds very demonic. What is your opinion on that?
Well, I try not to bring religion into the field of paranormal investigations because if you're going to bring religion into it, you're already being biased in your research. If you're going to be scientific in your research, you can't be biased. As I've always stated, you have to go with what you know and not with what you think you know. Now, don't get me wrong. I do believe that there is negative energy out there. But just because it's negative, I'm not one of those that's going to label it demonic. We've all have experienced very negative people in our lives. And when they pass away, who's to say, they can't be an ass in the afterlife as well. So I really do try to just basically focus on the phenomena itself and not necessarily label it demonic.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Because some of these things, these events, the spirits that come through, they seem more powerful than others. And this is certainly one where they were super powerful, whoever they or he or she was. It seemed like it was an extremely powerful force that took over this little boy. Actually, one of the Jesuits that was at Boston College, which is my old alma mater here, talked about this case. He was somehow involved in it, and he said, if you saw what we saw when we were on the train with this little boy, you would run all the way back to New York. So, and he was dead serious. I don't know what he saw. He didn't want to talk about it.
No, it is definitely a very interesting case. And if you're going to talk about, as negative as things could get, that's probably one of them. Like I said, there are extremely negative energies out there. I'm not going to deny that. But, when you get into religion, there's all different religions out there that have many different beliefs and have many different labels for that negativity that we can experience. And again, like I said, you just can't be, truly scientific if you're going to be biased and bring that into your belief system or how you investigate the paranormal. You really do have to be unbiased and just focus on the phenomena itself. So I'm not trying to be disrespectful to anybody's beliefs. I'm just saying that, yes, there is very negative energy out there and there's very positive energy as well. We just are not sure exactly what we are encountering. And if you want to figure out what that is, you have to focus on the phenomena.
Now, are you involved with doing any kind of self-protection before you go into these places, or do you feel you don't need it?
Well, again, not bringing religion into it, but I do believe that what has protected me all these years, because I've been to some of the most, I guess what most people would say is the most negative places you can imagine. I got to go through the Amityville house as well. And
I want to talk about that.
It's a situation where I feel what protects me the most is not bringing, any spiritual belief to it, but being respectful to the property. I think that is what's kept me out of danger. is I don't go in taunting whatever it is there. Oh, come on, prove it to me that you're here. Bite me, scratch me, push me, come on.
Yeah.
I don't believe you. I think that type of attitude is going to cause more harm to you later throughout life. So it's a situation that's like me walking into your house. You're sitting on your chair eating your dinner, and I'm going, I don't believe you're here. I'm right in your face, cussing you out. You're going to be like, what the hell? Who the hell are you?
Right. Yeah.
And you'll be like, yeah, I'll get you. I'll probably get you when the cameras aren't on, when they're not looking,
Yeah.
I think in those types of I think in those types of situations, I think then, you're asking for trouble. You're asking for something, whatever's there, to follow you home if, people believe that. So
I agree with you. I think that's a bad way to go.
Yeah, so for me, it's just go in. I let my intentions known out loud. I say, I'm just here to offer you a voice if you wish to speak. I'm here to hopefully, tell your story. I just want to, I mean you no harm. And then when I leave, I say, thank you for allowing me to be in your space. I hope you took the time to talk. Hopefully, I'll be back. And that's as simple as that.
That's a wonderful
throughout all my
approach.
years of doing this, and that I think is what has, kept things from at least following me home. So.
Yeah, good for you. Well, I like that. Well, Ross, we're going to take a very short commercial break, and there's just so much more to talk about with you. We've got to get into the Amityville house. Also, haunted toys, haunted churches. My goodness, I think you've investigated all of them. So stay tuned, everybody. You are listening to Supernatural Girls Radio. We'll be right back.
Pure essential oils, specialized minerals, and a revolutionary anti-aging technology. Astridian combines the best of all scientifically proven ingredients in easy-to-use creams, lotions, and concentrated serums. Astridian's advanced line of products take your skin to a new level of being healthy and beautiful. We offer a variety of collections that address all your skin concerns. The Essential Anti-Aging Series treats and moisturizes your skin for a long-lasting, younger look. The Multivitamin Series promotes healthy skin with high-quality vitamins and minerals. The Sports Series restores skin from cellular damage and stress. Astridian also offers a revitalizing solution for hair and a professional series for doctors and medical spas. Visit astridian.love today and begin your new journey to healthy, beautiful, youthful skin. Astridian, beyond your expectations.
There are a lot of psychics out there. How do you decide which one is right for you? You look for someone who empowers you, who's practical and spiritually connected, who says, here are your opportunities, here are your challenges, and here's a way to deal with them, and then gives you your own toolbox to make your life everything you want it to be. Hi, I'm Corby Mitleid, and that's how I work with you. As a certified professional tarot reader, I've helped thousands of people for over 40 years through my toolbox. Cards, past life retrieval, numerology, spirit guide conferences, and mediumship. Whether it's career, relationships, finances, or your spiritual road, together we can replace your confusion with clarity. And you'll probably find a little laughter along the way. Visit me at CorbyMitleid.com to find out how to cross your bridge from fear to fearlessness and fly. And tell me you found me at Supernatural Girls for a special gift with your reading. Corby Mitleid, the practical psychic for catching your tomorrows today. Find me at CorbyMitleid.com. That's CorbyMitleid.com.
Your property tax bill. Have you seen it lately? It's frightening. Your property taxes are going up while your home value is going down. It's time to fight back and win. For the real truth about the property tax system, get attorney Pat Quintilian's book, Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It. Attorney Quintilian answers all your questions and gives you the facts you need to fight a property tax bill that is spiraling out of control. You'll also read about what happens to property owners who don't check their property records, only to find out too late they're taxed on square footage, fixtures, and even buildings that they don't own. Is this happening to you? Learn your rights. Buy attorney Pat Quintilian's book today. Are you getting screwed on your property taxes? How to find out and how to fix it. Available on Amazon.com.
Are you frustrated with endless mantras, affirmations, and processes that promise to align your life with your dreams, only to find yourself years later in the same space where you began? Do you feel like you must be doing something wrong because nothing seems to be working? Don't you just wish that someone could shift your consciousness for you and your life could align with your desires without all the effort? Well, your wish is about to come true. Hi, I'm Carrie Cannon, and I have a gift that allows me to align the consciousness of others to be in harmony with their dreams. The best part is, it requires no particular effort on your part. Upon listening to a consciousness alignment, people have reported instant energy shifts, financial windfalls, soulmate connections, healed relationships, physical healings, and more. To gain access to a free trial offer for my entire Manifesting Miracles library of consciousness alignments, go to commandmiracles.com now for details. Again, that's commandmiracles.com for information about our free trial offer. That's commandmiracles.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker, and tonight I am speaking with a ghost hunter extraordinaire. He is a paranormal investigator, and his name is Ross Allison. He has written 8 books. I'm going to name some of them, and Ross, you'll fill me in on the other ones. Spooked in Seattle, My Haunted Journal, Tacoma's Haunted History, Haunted Toys, Haunted Churches, and I'll let you take it from there.
Oh, my God. So we got Haunted Ships and Lighthouses as well. What number is that? I'm trying to think. Ghostology 101 is another one. I think that's 8, right?
Yeah, that's 8. You got it.
All right.
Wow.
All right.
Excellent. Now, all these books are available, everybody, on Amazon.com. So take a look, and there's got to be something in there. If you're into ghost hunting, there's got to be at least one of those books that you want in your library. So let's talk, Ross, about one of my favorite, if not most horrific stories is the Amityville house. You got to go there. What happened?
To be honest with you, nothing. I actually got to walk through the house. It was back when it was up for sale. They had an open house, and I was one of the few people that just got to walk through the house. There was nobody else there. The realtor was outside doing something in the yard, and I realized I am completely alone in this house. And I was probably in the house for a good, 45 minutes, just walking around, taking it in. I had my recorder going, and nothing. I didn't capture any EVPs or anything. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. How long after the family that, this is based on lived there, were you in the house? How many years?
Oh, this was, this was when it went up for sale again, maybe about 10 years ago, maybe, I think it was. Mm-hmm. So it's been long after the Lutzes and all that. So
it was a horrible story with those murders that took place.
Oh, yeah. No, it's definitely an interesting case. But unfortunately, I was still a kid when that all happened. So I, couldn't run out there with my ghost hunting equipment, from the Northwest over to the East Coast,
Right. Right. Oh, my goodness. Well, at least you got to walk through it, but nobody talked? Nobody left an EVP for you?
No. But then that's, just proof as to it's all about being in the right place at the right time. Like I said, you can go to the most haunted places out there and you may never experience anything. It doesn't mean that it's not haunted. It's just you weren't there at the right time.
Right. No, that makes sense. Yes, the energy has to be right or nothing will come through. So, and I remember an indigenous leader I worked with for a period of time and studied with, and that's what she used to say. She says, the energy has to be right. It has to match up for any of those phenomena to take place. So, haunted toys. Now that really creeps me out. Tell me about haunted toys, especially. I can't stand dolls, and because I see energy hanging around them all the time. Did you cover that in haunted toys?
Oh yes, definitely. Now the Haunted series is a series I do with David Weatherly. Haunted Toys was our first book. Then we followed it up with Haunted Ships and Lighthouses, and just now this month came Haunted Churches. And due just before Halloween, we will have Haunted Historic Hotels of the West Coast. So It's a fun series that we really like to do because for me, I really feel that a lot of these stories need to be published because I started to find, as I've been in this field for as long as I have, there's a lot of groups popping up out of the excitement of ghost hunting and seeing the television shows, but they don't last very long. I think the average life expectancy of a ghost hunting group is about 3 years. And it's just because, it is a lot of tedious work. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of tedious work, and it's not always exciting that you think it is. When you watch these television shows, a lot of times it can be very boring. And so I started to find that a lot of these, as these groups would go in and investigate a great place and have some great evidence, once their group is gone, the evidence is gone too. The stories are gone.
Oh, no.
And in most cases, they're gone forever. So these experiences are getting lost. And so I wanted to make sure that these stories were getting published, because once it's published, it's forever.
Right.
And I don't want these stories and experiences to be erased. And so, when David approached me and said, he would love to do a book with me, because he had read my Spooked in Seattle book and really enjoyed it, I said I'd be honored to work with you. And so we came up with the series Haunted. And so Haunted Toys was one of our first books that we put together. And we just put together a lot of our own personal experiences and other very famous toys, dolls, haunted places with children involved, haunted games that we put together. And it just was a lot of fun doing that. And so
now tell
one
us
of my
about
favorites.
Okay, go ahead. You've got a favorite. I want to hear it. What is it?
Well, I was going to say, I got lots of favorites. We could talk for quite a few days here if you want to just tell ghost stories all night.
I would love
it. But the story I was going to tell you about is one of my personal experiences, and that is Mr. Creepy.
Ooh.
Now, he is a ventriloquist doll that I came across, and you can look him up online. Just look up Mr. Creepy. Spooked in Seattle, you should be able to find him. We got pictures out there. And his story goes back to the 1960s when he was created by a retired ventriloquist artist. And in his retirement years, now this is a guy who actually goes back to the vaudeville days in the Northwest. So in his retirement years, he would make these dolls and he would perform from time to time. Well, he had made this doll, and he made this doll in his likeness. Now, he also made a female counterpart in his wife's likeness. What made these dolls extra creepy is they actually used their real hair on these dolls.
Oh, my God, that's so creepy. That really is.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, the couple passed away in an accident. And so after their passing, the dolls were sold as a pair at the estate sale. Mm-hmm. Now, a woman who deals with antiques, she actually purchased the dolls, and she put them on a shelf behind her register. And they sat there for a good long time. No issues whatsoever. Well, unfortunately, they had sold the building that our shop was in. So she ended up having to pack and move to another location. So she ended up packing the dolls, and she packed them away separately, and she put them into storage. So when she finally got her new location and she started restocking her store, she came across the male figure, but she couldn't find the female figure. But she went ahead and took the male figure, and she put him in a glass case behind the register. Now, right away, she started having weird experiences. She constantly felt like there was somebody standing behind her, watching her, breathing down the back of her neck.
Oh.
She said some days she'd even come in and find that his head would be turned or his eyes would be looking in another direction.
Ah.
Now, what's odd about his eyes is his eyes are actually spring-loaded. So when you're playing around with the trigger to move his eyes left or right, once you let go of the trigger, his eyes automatically spring back to the center. So they do not stay left or right unless you're holding on to the trigger. So when she comes into her store and she sees him looking to the left, that is odd. All right?
Yes,
she said one day she
is.
came into the store. Yeah, she came into the store one day and found that the glass case was wide open. So after a number of these experiences, she actually had enough and decided to move him to the back of the store, and she put him on a bottom shelf so she didn't have to see him every day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I go into a lot of these antique stores, I was looking for, pieces for my death museum that I had at one time, and I always ask them, do you have anything that's odd? Because I like to hear their stories.
Yeah.
And, of course, right when I asked her that question, she immediately told me about Mr. Creepy. Now, this is the name that she had given him.
Yeah.
So I was like, I love this guy. I would love to give him a home at Spooked in Seattle. So she was so happy to get rid of him that she sold me him for $1.
Oh, boy. What a bargain.
So I ended up bringing him to our museum, and I had put him in a glass case. And I was alone there one day. When I was in the office, I heard the thud against glass. And I immediately thought something happened in the gift shop. So I immediately, go out and I'm starting exploring, and I can't find anything disturbed. And I'm walking around looking, trying to see what could have made that noise. And as I come around the tables, I'm now looking at the glass case that has all our haunted dolls. And I noticed right away that his head was turned and leaning up against the glass.
Oh, my God.
And I was just like, holy crap. Yeah. So I immediately take a picture just to prove that this really did happen. Well, to my surprise, when I examined the photo, and I believe the photo is online, you can probably find it out there, but if you look at the reflection in the glass, it actually looks more lifelike than the doll itself. Where the doll has these very cartoonish features, you'll see the reflection of the doll. It does not.
So it looks more human?
It does. So I think that is the gentleman that actually haunts the doll. And
Mrs. Creepy was never found?
Mrs. Creepy was never found, and I think that's the whole reason why he's so active, is because here are these dolls that were created at the same time and had never been separated until just now. And so I think he is just looking around for her, wondering where she disappeared to.
Oh, my gosh. That makes sense.
So I've been on a quest to try and find her so we can bring those two souls together.
Yeah. She's got to be somewhere.
Hopefully.
Yeah, that would be great if you could reunite them. Oh, my. Well, that's very exciting. And I really admire the way you document everything. I think that's so important for all these stories, but just in general, some of these events that take place, people just kind of lose their minds and they forget about documentation. But you're really, really on that path that saying, I'm going to prove this. And it's so helpful to everybody in the paranormal field.
And the one thing that I found, too, is in writing these stories and researching these locations, is we all know how a lot of these rumors get started, and they get exaggerated throughout the years. And then you come to find out, what was maybe just a small encounter ends up being this huge, demonic, tragedy that really never happened.
Right.
And so, it's one of the things that me and David have been true about with these books is, if we find these stories aren't true, we'll publish that and say, hey, you guys, I know it's all over the internet that this happened, but unfortunately it did not happen. But here is the story. Sometimes these stories are rooted to something that did happen. And that's what we try to do is, we try to find the root of these, stories and bring some truth to it and, strip down these encounters back to the basics of what really happened. And so
that's
that, I think is very important as well.
It is. It absolutely is. Now, what about churches? what did you find when you were looking for church stories? Any favorites?
Oh my gosh, there was so many. It was a fun project, but it was one of those projects that David likes to give me a little crap about, because it took me a while to get this one out, because I found myself when I was, digging around for, a lot of times, when we write these stories, we're, trying to come up with the history of the building itself, and then going into the ghost stories. So, we do believe that history does play a major part in a lot of these possible hauntings happening in these locations. And when we were, writing these books, it's just like, oh my gosh, sometimes you can just easily fall down the rabbit hole, because, one story leads to another story, and then you forget where, what you were there, your intention was in the beginning. So that was one of the cases when I started working on haunted churches, because I found so many, amazing aspects that led to other stories. It's just like, oh my gosh. But haunted churches, let's see. I do like to talk about some of the places that I've actually had personal experiences. But then, as I said earlier, too, sometimes you find that some of these places, the claims that they claim happened at these locations didn't really happen. Like a prime example is the Workman Union Church in Missouri. This is a place, it's an abandoned, empty shell of a building now in a cemetery. And there have been a lot of stories to this place, from a mad preacher who basically stabbed a woman that he loved to death. And they say that he had hidden the knife in the floor of the old church. There's also a story of a bearded lumberjack who wields an axe and will chase off, trespassers if they are on the property late at night. And even one of my favorite stories is of a woman who had hanged herself, or they even say that she may have been lynched. And they say if you drive under one of the trees, you will hear her feet dangling on the top of the car.
Ooh.
And I'll be honest with you, those three stories aren't true. It's just, again, what the situation is you have here is that Northwest Missouri State University is about 15 minutes away from the cemetery and old church. And so a lot of these college students, when they're bored, they'll, entertain themselves by going to places that they claim to be haunted. And they're known to make up a lot of these stories just to scare their girlfriends. And so that is the root to a lot of this, is that they'll make up a lot of these stories, and those stories get passed down and get, and become these grander and grander, encounters that, again, never happened. But who's to say that the church isn't haunted? There have been stories of encounters there that are from credible witnesses. There's people that have claimed to have seen a Civil War soldier on horseback riding around through the cemetery. And there are Civil War soldiers buried in the cemetery. So it's very true.
Yeah,
so you get a lot of things like that. So, don't always believe these grand, stories that you may hear, but a lot of it is rooted to an actual encounter. Some things do happen there.
And you mentioned the Civil War soldiers. If I could just ask you about that, have you been to the sites where they've had these battles? And because it was a gruesome war, and I was just wondering if you've had any experiences on the old battlefield, because there's been a lot of reports about things there.
In fact, it's kind of a funny story, but my first year I was asked to lecture at a college that was actually in Gettysburg. So I was really excited. I finally get to check out Gettysburg, and I thought, I really want to. Now, a lot of times when I do my lectures, I don't have a lot of time. I'll fly in to one state, do my lecture, and then I have to fly out the next morning to do my next lecture. So I don't get the opportunity to investigate a lot of these, places that I get, invited to. So I actually found myself in Gettysburg for the night. Now, I had usually when I do my lectures, like I said, I'll do a ghost hunt, And a lot of times my ghost hunts can last until, 1 o'clock in the morning, depending on, the students in the school. Sure. And then what happens is I'll end up having to catch my flight early the next morning. So there are times when I hardly get any sleep before, I'm catching my flight for the next lecture. So this is one of those situations where I was up late investigating on the campus, and I had to be up really early in the morning to, catch my next flight. So I decided to save some money and not pay for a hotel. It was like one of those situations where I figured, I'm only going to get 3 hours sleep in the hotel as it is. So I decided I'm going to spend the night in one of the battlefields.
Oh, that was brave of you.
Yeah, I had a rental car, so I'm driving around through all the different battlefields, and I found this one that had this nice, parking lot right next to the battlefield. And so I thought, because there's all these stories of people saying at night you'll see or hear the Civil War soldiers, marching around. And I'm like, I want to experience this. So it's about, I think 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning. And, I'm just kind of laying in the car trying to get some sleep, and I feel the car move. So I peek up and I'm looking around, I don't see anybody around. And it's like, okay, that was interesting. So I lay back down, and sure enough, I feel the car move again. So I peek up and I'm just looking around.
Is it like somebody's pushing against it and rocking it?
It's like a jolt, like somebody had just, bumped up against the car.
Okay. Mhm.
So it's not like shaking, like, somebody's, constantly sitting on the car and shaking it. It's just like this quick little bump up against the car, and the car just kind of moves a little bit. So I lay back down, and I'm waiting for this to happen again. Now, by this time, I've turned my recorder on because, again, when I go to sleep, in haunted places, I've got my equipment, ready to go. So I've got my recorder going. I got my hand on the camera waiting, for something to happen again. And then all of a sudden I hear this knock, knock, knock on the window. And I turn around, and here's a flashlight in my face, and a cop had pulled up and told me I needed to leave.
Oh, darn it.
I know.
Darn it.
So that was
this.
my experience in Gettysburg. But my team has had the opportunity to go back, and we investigated the orphanage there. We also investigated, I can't remember the name of the house. It's the house where the first woman or the first civilian was shot and killed. A bullet went through the doorway. I can't remember her name. I apologize. It's another well-known haunted location. That's another place we got to investigate in Gettysburg. Oh my gosh, Gettysburg is a great place. I would love to go back because even when we went back and did our own personal investigations, we've had encounters. I remember in the orphanage, I had asked, can you make a noise or a loud noise just to verify that you're there? And of course, you'd hear that loud bang noise, and that I actually got on video. So I do recall that experience. So there's, some pretty cool locations in Gettysburg that I could definitely say, yes, I've had my own personal experiences.
And you've been to Scotland, so you've been to the castles over there. Is there anything that stands out in Scotland to you?
Oh, yes. My first time in Scotland, I had made friends with another paranormal group out there. And they invited me to actually to investigate with them. They were investigating, I believe it's called Menzies Castle, Menzies Castle, I believe it was called. Mm-hmm. Now, I remember this encounter because this was pretty interesting. Me and Mark, who is the leader of the other group, Mark Stocks, me and him had gone into a room, and I remember the door had shut. And so we were like, oh, that's kind of odd, maybe it was a breeze, because you are in these very drafty old castles.
Yeah.
And so we went to go open the door, and the door would not open.
Uh-oh.
It somehow got locked or jammed, and we could not get it open. We were literally pounding on the door trying to get the other team's attention to help us get out of the room. And it took a good half hour for them to try and get that door unlocked. And it didn't have a lock on the door. It somehow the latch got jammed. It was one of those weird experiences. But yeah, I got locked into a castle in Scotland.
And so while you were locked in there, I know you had your recorder going. Did anybody say anything?
No.
Darn it.
I know.
You gave them all the opportunity in the world there. You were trapped for half an hour in that room.
But, with my luck, as we're focused on the door trying to get out, there's probably an apparition standing behind us, pointing his finger, laughing at us.
Yeah, you're probably right. Oh, that's so funny. Gosh. Well, Scotland's a beautiful country, and they certainly do not have a lack of castles over there. So is there any other country you've been to where you've also visited castles?
Oh, my God. We actually did one year. We did a haunted castle tour where me and my team, we actually flew into London. We spent a couple days in London. We actually went to Highgate Cemetery, which is an amazing, it's like the oldest cemetery near London. And if you would love old tombstones, the history, I definitely recommend seeing Highgate Cemetery if you're ever out in that area. Okay. Also, there's east and west part of the cemetery. The east part is usually open. You do have to pay to get in, but it's easier to get into the east. The west only, which is the oldest part, does tours, and that's the only way you can get into the west side. And so I do say if you are going to go out there, you do have to book your tour ahead of time because they can fill up fast. So we went and visited Highgate Cemetery. And then we took the train out to, I forget the name of the town, but it's where Chillingham Castle is. And so that's an adventure, too, because Chillingham Castle is not easy to get to if you're a tourist without a car. I remember we were training it. We took the train, took the bus, and we found ourselves abandoned in this little town that we end up having to try and find a cab to take us out to Chillingham Castle. And Chillingham Castle is in the middle of nowhere. I mean, you are surrounded by forests and fields, and it is an amazing place. It really is. It is one of the most documented haunted locations. They do claim to be the most haunted castle in the UK. It's been on my bucket list for the longest time, so we actually spent the night at Chillingham Castle. And that place, they say it's got the bloodiest history, and we did have some interesting experiences. Now, one of the things is that we got to do the tour, and at the end of the tour, they say, if you're going to venture off around, and do your own little investigation, that's fine. Now, it was in the off season, so there was only, I'd say, probably 8 people staying in the castle, all right? That's including us, all right?
Oh.
So it was a very small group at this castle, so I definitely recommend staying there in the off season. And so they said that the one of the challenges is you don't want to be out in the woods after midnight. You cannot, handle being out in the woods after midnight. So challenge accepted. We're like, yeah, we're going to do this.
So you went right out there.
So we went right out there. We're out exploring in the woods around the castle. And they say, there's where all these hanging trees are. There are stories that you would actually see a couple women walking around in the woods as well. You'll hear them talking. I believe you might hear them humming or singing as they're walking around through the woods. And so we're in the woods, and all of a sudden we start to hear women. Now, those women there was another group of women staying at the castle with us. So, they decided to come out and explore the woods as well. So we're like, oh, great. There goes our controlled, environments. We've got, these other people walking around and they're talking and, making a ruckus. So that's going to, ruin any EVPs that we have. So, we try to get away from them as possible. But this was also a night that it was so dark that you had to have some sort of light to see your way around. It was that dark.
So no moon.
No moonlight. It was just pitch black. And so I'm kind of looking through the trees, and I'm trying to see where those women are so I can kind of get an idea how close they are, because we can hear them talking, but we cannot see them walking around. And it's like, well, where are their torches, because they call them torches over in the UK, flashlights. Yeah, right. And I was like, where are they? I can't see them walking around. And then all of a sudden it just stopped. Like you hear these women, talking and walking around, and then it just stopped. And I was like, oh, my God, I think we just experienced that phenomena that they claim happens in the woods. We experienced it ourselves.
You did? Oh, my, because you probably went back and the girls weren't the girls were in their rooms or whatever. They weren't out there.
No, they probably went to their rooms. Nobody else was out there. So that was cool.
That is. Now, did you get that on tape, or because you thought they were human, you didn't tape them?
No, we actually, I believe what we captured on audio was very faint. You can kind of hear it, but not. Mm-hmm. So it just the recording didn't turn out that well. But there was other little things that we experienced, that night as well, from, asking the spirit to open the door, and the door opened on command. So that was kind of cool. But after Chillingham, because believe me, I got more haunted castles we could talk about.
Okay.
So after Chillingham, we ended up driving up to Scotland, and we stayed 4 nights at Roslyn Castle.
Ooh.
We had the whole location to ourselves for 4 nights. It was one of the most amazing experiences. Let alone, it's haunted, but just the experience of staying in something this historic. You got the fire, blazing in the fireplace, and you're just sitting in this room surrounded by all these old, pictures and paintings of the family's history. It's just like, oh, my God. Stuff that goes back to the late 1700s. This is just amazing. 1600s. And just sitting there going through, the ancestry books of the castle and all this stuff, and it was just, what an amazing experience that was. But this place was pretty cool because most of the castle itself is in ruins, but there's this small building that they have preserved. And below the building are 3 layers of dungeon.
Oh, my God.
So
3 layers, like 3 stories of dungeon?
3 stories of dungeon below you as you're staying in this house.
That's a little uncomfortable.
It was amazing, So at any time in the night, we could go down into these different levels of the dungeon and do our own little investigation. So that was pretty cool.
And what did you come back with?
With that place, that was actually a pretty quiet place. We didn't have a lot of personal experiences. Mm-hmm. I do know that there's the haunted toilet, so the toilet kept flushing by itself throughout the night.
Oh, my God.
And it wasn't something that was timed because, usually when you experience things like that, you try to time it just to see if it could be natural phenomena causing it to just flush automatically. So it wasn't like every 15 minutes the toilet flushes.
Right.
It would happen, 5 minutes, and then, another 20 minutes later, then it flushes again, So it wasn't something that you could time.
Yeah.
I do remember we were down in the basement area. We did hear voices when we were alone down there. And a lot of times it's very light, very muffled. So they don't always turn out to be a Class A EVP on your recordings. Mm-hmm. let's see, a lot of people had feelings. So that was a pretty cool place. And that's actually, Roslyn Castle is right next to Roslyn Chapel. So you get to go over and check out the chapel. And the chapel is actually very well known. It was actually featured in, what was it called? Tom Hanks movie about, solving these ancient crimes. What was it?
Yes, you're
Da
right.
Vinci Code.
Yep, I remember
Da Vinci
that.
Code.
I can't think of the movie, but yes.
All right.
Now,
Yeah.
is that the chapel
So
that also has demon figures in it?
Oh, yeah. There's lots of...
That's the one.
Well, not the castle. Or you're talking about the chapel?
No, I'm talking about the chapel next to it.
No. Well, yes. The chapel is the one that has all the gargoyles carved into it, yes.
Yeah.
It was, like I said, it was featured in the Da Vinci Code at the very
you
end.
Remembered it. Okay, great.
Yes. So what was really cool, my first time there, we had the chapel to ourselves, and I was actually down in the crypt area doing an EVP session. So that was an amazing experience alone, just to have this chapel to yourself, and you're alone in the crypt, trying to talk to ghosts.
Yeah. What a great life you live. This is exciting stuff.
So thank you. It's it's a passion of mine. I love to explore amazing haunted locations. So
well, you're doing a great job reporting back to us. That's for sure.
Well, that's the thing is I do want to publish these stories, these experiences, so that even after my time, other generations can have something to go back to and compare their experiences to other people's experiences. That's one of the main reasons why I write. Yeah.
Well, it's a wonderful goal and purpose that you have in exploring these situations and providing us with the real story and any paranormal phenomenon that you capture. I think that's just great.
Right.
And there's so many. You're winding down the show, unfortunately, but there's so much more we haven't even touched on. I know.
I haven't gotten halfway through our trip.
We did 90 minutes almost already. Like you said, we could talk for days about this stuff. You're a great guest, Ross, and I just love your stories. I'm going to have to bring you back. I hope you don't mind, but I would love to have you back on the show. Yeah, and we'll go further with all of this. We haven't talked about the catacombs, the ancient
the catacombs.
We've got so much more to cover here.
I've been to Japan. I've been to China. Oh, my God. I've been to, Transylvania, followed the life of Vlad the Impaler, got to stay at haunted castles there.
Oh, I got to hear about Vlad next time you're on. That's one of my favorites. Vlad the Impaler. Yes. What a guy.
Yep.
Oh, my. Well, I want to make sure people know how to get a hold of you. If they have a story, then how do they reach you? How do they tell you about it?
Well, definitely I encourage people to follow me on Facebook. I am limited on I've reached my max on my friends, but definitely follow me because a lot of times when I go on investigations, I'll do a live feed. So you can actually watch me do a live feed from Facebook. So definitely follow me, especially because we're getting ready to go this weekend to Montana. We're doing a prison and some brothels out there. So we'll be doing some live feeds from those locations. So definitely look up Ross Allison Ghost Hunter and follow me there. And also you can check out a ghost at aghost.org, and that's AGHOST.org. You can see a lot of our stuff and evidence that we've posted on our website. You can also, if you're ever in the Seattle area and would love to, once we are able to open tours back up, check out spookedinseattle.com. And you may be lucky enough to be able to take one of my tours or ghost hunts, my public ghost hunts. So definitely check that out. You can also check out my books on Amazon. Newest one is Haunted Churches. And then, of course, the next one coming out before Halloween is Haunted Historic Hotels of the Pacific Coast. So definitely check out me and David's books and other books that I've written as well. I think that's about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ross. This has been an absolutely delightful conversation, and you've given me a lot to think about. And I know our audience is doing the same thing. So I'll be in touch to have you back. And, again, thank you so much for a wonderful evening of ghost stories. It was great. Thank you.
You bet.
And now next week, everybody, we'll be back with another terrific show. And I think we're going to be doing energy healing. So let's find out about that next week. Until then, see you on the Blue Highway. Good night.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next week for another radio adventure with Supernatural Girls.